Welcome, everybody. Today we have Amy Eisenstein here with us. She is a consultant, a speaker, a trainer on all things Major Gift and Capital Campaigns. She is the co-creator of Capital Campaign Pro, and she's also an author. Check out her Major Gift Fundraising for Small Shops, Raising More with Less, and 50 Asks Within 50 Weeks. Those are just some of the books that she's written. And so we're going to chat here at the NJ Environmental Fundraisers Gathering with Amy, and she's going to share Raising Major Gifts, your questions answered. We're going to go around the Zoom room here and introduce ourselves, as well as some questions you may have for Amy about major gifts. And with that, just to say your name, what organization you're with, as well as your name and potentially the role you play in your fundraising office or advancement office. Denise, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Denise Lanza. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance for Morris County Parks. And I am in that role actually as a full-time employee of the Park Commission. So technically half of me belongs to the Alliance, and that's it. That's our staff for the Park Alliance. So I'm a half-person shop. And I have to say that I actually have a folder in my Outlook column of Amy's emails. So thank you so very much for all of those. They're absolutely wonderful and interesting. And I guess there's so many questions for today, but the biggest one that's coming up, I think, is for an agency that is not necessarily a social service direct agency, and all of the current equity-based funding guidelines that are coming out. How do I kind of fit in that, without having data specifically for a marginalized community and things of that sort? So I guess that's kind of my biggest question right now. Thank you.
Wade.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wade Kirby, the Director of Development for the Great Swamp Watershed Association. Very glad to be a part of this today, and I have no outstanding direct questions. Just looking forward to hearing the proceedings. Thanks.
And David.
Hey everyone, Dave Cucchiera, the Development Director at the Saraland Conservancy. I'm responsible for donor stewardship, donor campaigns, business partnerships, and grants. Kind of a one-person show myself as well. I guess my question would be, engaging the board in major gifts. How do you feel about like staff retreats? Board retreats, excuse me. We're considering one among our board right now. So I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm the new Director of Development at the Raptor Trust. I started here a couple of months ago. This is the first environmental organization where I've worked as a fundraiser. So I guess my major question would be, how is major gift fundraising different when you're in the environmental space versus other areas of the nonprofit world? I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And Erica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Kalachi. I'm the Assistant Development Director at the New Jersey Conservation Foundation. And I'm hoping to hear today a little bit about moves management. I manage our CRM. We're looking to move donor databases, and I'd love to hear, I know conceptually what moves management means, but, how does it actually apply, and how can we make sure we're capturing all the information we need to keep those relationships current? Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, Lauren, why don't you introduce yourself and share a question?
So my name is Lauren Swern. I'm the Development Director at the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. I've been here for a decade, and I'm lucky enough to meet Amy when she first started her consulting firm in 2008. It's when I started joining the fundraising world. Back when we were at Association for Fundraising Professionals New Jersey, which is a very thriving chapter if anybody's interested in joining. And so I have the pleasure to introduce Amy, as well as I'd love to hear about what are trends you're seeing in major gift work, as well as capital campaigns. You get to speak to so many people.
Great. Okay.
As well as, if you ever have time, what it's like to speak with Seth Godin.
Oh, right. All right. That's funny. Yes, I have interviewed Seth Godin twice, which is a story, two stories in and of themselves. Maybe we'll have time. All right, great. So, well, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I am in New Jersey as well. Of course, knowing Lauren through New Jersey AFP, but I do speak to groups often around the country, around the world. But it's fun to actually have a New Jersey group. So that's actually very different for me. So it's nice to see everybody. I'm like, oh, that's just 5 miles down the road. That's just 10 miles down the road. All right, so let's talk about major gifts. So I did prepare a few slides. So I think that let me start with 10 minutes of slides. And then it actually, I think, will help Erica's question on moves management. Erica, I see you've taken yourself off camera, which is fine if you're eating lunch or something's going on back there. But I'm curious what database you're using and if you're thinking of switching to something and you have it picked out. And I would love for you guys in the chat box to say what donor database you're using and if you love it, or, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down. If maybe just say if you'd recommend it or not, something like that to help Erica out if she's choosing a new one. Erica, what are you using now and what are you switching to?
We are using Salsa CRM, and I don't know if folks had heard, but Salsa was acquired by an umbrella company called Bonterra, and so the Salsa programming is sunsetting, and they're encouraging us to move into what they are using, Every Action. Our organization has not yet made the decision to go with Every Action. We're still exploring some of our other options, although Every Action is one that we are exploring.
Okay, great.
Very stressful times over here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is stressful. All right. So great. Okay. So yes, QuickBooks is not a CRM, Denise. Obviously, you know that. So all right, good. Lauren, what are you guys using? Oh, Razor's Edge. Sorry. You're listed as New Jersey Highlands, so I got thrown off for a second. Okay. All right, great. All right, Christina, you're using Bloomerang. Yep. Okay. You know, I think they all have pros and cons. That's the bottom line. And the question is, you know, which one does most of the things that you hope it will do? All right, let me, oh, Lauren, I don't have the ability to share my screen. So if you want to do that, otherwise we'll just chat. Okay. All right, let's see here. Okay. Oh, you know what? Before we go to this, I'm going to talk about the 4 steps of major gifts. And that goes to Erica's question about moves management. And really what moves management is moving people through this fundraising cycle, starting with donor identification, who are good prospective donors for your organization, into cultivation, building relationships with them. Step 3 is the solicitation. That's the actual ask. And 4 is stewardship. And you can actually apply this fundraising cycle to any type of fundraising. It works for grants, events, direct mail. You still need to identify who you're inviting or applying to. You still need to cultivate donors, whether it's a corporation or a foundation or an individual. You still need to ask them whether it's a grant application, an invitation, a sit-down solicitation, a phone call, an email, and you still need to thank them. So honestly, this is a fundraising cycle. We're going to apply it specifically to major gifts today. But I am curious. So that's what moves management is. It just means moving an individual or a corporation or a foundation through this fundraising cycle. That's all it means. And how you do it is the question. And so I'm curious though, since we're talking about major gifts, what is a major gift at your organization? So in the chat, you know, is it $1,000 and up? Is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? And let me give you some parameters before you answer. If you don't know, you may have a definition at your organization, and then feel free to answer. Let me give you some parameters. One, and there's no right or wrong answer, by the way. I like to ask you to think about what would be a good use of your time to sit down with a donor over coffee and ask for a gift. if, would it make sense for you to ask for $50? I hope not. That's not a good use of your time. So that's not a major gift. $1,000, if you vigorously nod your head, then that's probably a major gift at your organization, because you don't get tons of those through the mail, through, online. But if I saw Denise like, nah, not so much. Okay, so maybe 10,000 and up. Is that a good use of your time to go out and ask a donor for a $10,000 gift? Probably for most of you, 10,000 and up. So anyways, so that's one rule of thumb. Sort of the other rule, major gifts are how you define them. How are you recognizing donors? It's important to know, what does that mean for your organization? Time management, what does that mean for your organization? That's why it's important to know. And for reporting back to the board. How many major gifts did you get this year? How many major gift donors repeated this year? So you need to know what your major gift levels are for tracking, for donor recognition, for use of your time. So anyways, I'm just curious. And it looks like we're in the $1,000 to $10,000 range, which is what most nonprofits are. So good. But if you don't know what it is at your organization, you should define it and sort of figure it out, because you can't raise it if you don't know what it is, right? All right, so let's look. The first step, so we're going to go really quickly through these 4 steps, and then we're going to just shut off the slides and answer questions, but I just want to give you a baseline. So in 10 minutes or less, we're going to talk about identifying donors, cultivating donors, soliciting donors. We're not really going to talk about stewarding donors, but it's an important part of the cycle. Okay, so donor identification. Who is the best prospective donor for your organization? It's important to know. So Christina, we'll talk about how to define a major gift at your organization. I see you in the chat there. So, but first we need to identify donors. A means ability. No, access. Let's do access. You can make A mean anything you want. So basically it's who has the ability to make the kind of gift that you want. A, let's do, what did I say? Now I'm changing my mind. Access, right? Who do you have access to? Who will answer the phone if you call? Who will respond to an email? Maybe not the first time you call, maybe not even the second time you call, but you have their phone number, you have their contact information. They will get back to you or somebody at your organization. That's what we mean by access. So you can rule out people like Oprah, Mackenzie Scott, Bill Gates, right? They're not going to return your calls. B is for belief. The best prospective donors believe in your cause or your mission. So, whether they're self-declared environmentalists or they like to be outside, they enjoy nature, whatever the case may be, you have to have some reason to believe that they believe and that they care. And C is for capacity, financial capacity. So do they have the ability to make the financial gift that you're looking for? So if you're looking for a gift of $5,000 to $10,000, you don't need Oprah. There's lots and lots of people in New Jersey who can give $5,000 to $10,000 a year. And so we just need, once you identify people that meet all 3 criteria, right? You have access to them. They'll respond to an email or phone call, maybe not the first try, but they will. They believe in the mission or cause, and they have the capacity to give the kind of gift you're looking for. And how would you know that? There's lots of ways to figure it out, but you might have a sense of currently what they give you, what they give to other organizations in your community, because you've seen their names in other annual reports or donor walls, or you know what they do for a living, or you know how they live or vacation, something like that. So there's lots of ways to look at capacity. Oops. Okay. So I actually have these. Okay. So here we go. If you want to look at your donor lists, I recommend the first step is to run 2 lists. 2 lists. One is your most loyal donors, everybody that's given, a gift a year for the last 5 years, or 4 out of the last 5 years, or 8 out of the last 10 years are your loyal donors. You want to run a second list of your largest donors. So largest donors in the last year or two, largest lifetime donors, and you're going to go through and rate these people. The affinity score along the bottom is, do you have access to them? So if they're in your donor database and they currently give, you can give them a 5 for access, right? They respond to your outreach. You have their contact information. And they believe in the cause because they give. They're loyal donors, they're big donors. So anybody who comes out of your donor database that's a big donor or a loyal donor, they can get us 5 on the affinity score sheet. And then capacity, you have to figure out, how much are you asking for? Are they, landing in the 3, 4, or 5? They're your best prospects for major gifts. So a lot of people make sort of the mistake thinking that major donors are out there somewhere. They're not. They're people who already give to your organization, maybe at much lower levels, and that's okay. Maybe they haven't given a big gift because you've never asked them for a big gift. So the first step is identifying donors. So I want you to identify 10 or 20 or 30 major gift prospective donors that meet the ABC criteria, and then cultivating them, right? So everybody's going to get a cultivation plan. So each person on your list, if you're just starting this and you're a 1-person or a half-person shop, who said they were a half-person shop? It was Denise. Yep. So start with 10 names. Not 100 names. None of you need 100 names. You can't manage 100 people. So, and Erica, if you want to do moves management, start with 10 names and move them through the cycle. So make a 1-page cultivation plan for the 10 people you've come up with that you're going to hopefully raise a major gift from this year. So what do you need to do to build a relationship with them, to get to know them, to have them get to know you? Do they need a tour? Do they need to come on a hike with you? Personalized notes in their newsletters, coffee meeting. So here, March, we have a coffee meeting. This is essential. This is where you ask them questions about their philanthropy and what their goals are for their philanthropy and why they care about your organization. So a coffee meeting is sort of my shorthand for a face-to-face sit-down meeting, right? So there's a whole series of things that you can do over the course of a year. You need an ask meeting, right? When are you going to ask them for a gift? So what's the plan for the year? That's how you move them through the cycle. All right, let me stop sharing for just a second. Any questions, thoughts on that so far? Okay, you know what? Let me move into some questions. Then we'll go back to the slides and talk about solicitation. But Erica,
Yes.
I know you like moves management seems mysterious, but it's really that simple. Does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, I've seen the fundraising cycle, I guess. And even, the last slide you had up with the steps throughout the year. Frankly, I actually had a question. Your recommendation for 10 people, would that be per person or in the pipeline for this year? So for instance, if we have, let's say a ED, a DD, and myself, would the 3 of us be looking at 10 people, or would the 3 of us be looking at 30 people?
So that is an excellent question. So we say that a full-time major gifts officer, if you have no other responsibilities but major gift fundraising, you should be managing 75 to 125 people at a time. A development director who's responsible for everything, including events and grant writing and marketing and mailings and whatever, I think they can manage a list of 20 people. Usually an executive director has the top 10 people. The development director would have, who's responsible for all fundraising at an organization, might have the next 20. So, I don't know whether 3 of you can manage 20 to 50 people, the 3 of you. Here's the rule of thumb. You need to meet with each person on your list in person or on Zoom, I'm counting Zoom now through the pandemic, we have this new rule that this counts as a one-on-one, not as a group. You need to meet with each person on your list one-on-one twice a year,
Mhm.
at least to cultivate them and at least to ask them, and ideally to thank them. So
Mhm.
2 to 3 times a year. So if you can manage 10 people, start with 10 people. If you can manage 20 people, but you need to meet with everybody on your list 2 to 3 times in order to take them through this process. So that's how you should figure out how many people you can manage as a group and individually.
That is excellent. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good. All right. So let's go to Denise's question about equity and diversity. Denise, ask the question again.
Sure. Obviously, we've all seen the current efforts to make sure that we are addressing diverse populations. I'm seeing a lot of grant opportunities coming through that only focus on, marginalized communities and BIPOC communities. And I just feel like I'm not really a direct social service provider. So I can't say, oh, I have 1,500 clients, of whom 20% are BIPOC or low.
Okay, but hold on. New Jersey is one of the most diverse states in the country.
Mhm.
And I don't know anything about Morris County.
We are 80% or about 75% white.
Okay. All right. So what you're going to say is that 25% of the people in this county are BIPOC, and the parks we're making the parks more accessible for them. Who else? Help me out here. What should Denise say to address this issue? I mean, parks probably historically are less accessible to people in poorer neighborhoods. So you're working to make them more accessible. I think there's a lot you could say, actually. And you can't make up the statistics. The statistics are 25%, and that's what you put. Anybody else? Wade, you want to chime in? No.
In terms of the demographic?
Yeah, or appealing to diverse audiences.
Yeah, well, Denise and I are in the same county. We're
Oh,
both in
okay.
Morris County, so there's not too much I could add to what she just
I
said.
think actually,
Okay.
Wade, one of the things I try to use, and you probably have done this too, is I'll look at the Alice population, because that helps me a little bit more in terms of explaining that although the census says this, the Alice population adds to those folks who are really low income and eligible for government programs and things like that. But
Right.
because some of you guys do programs and the Park Commission does programs as well, but in general, people are just coming out to the parks individually. I don't capture them. I don't track them.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Well,
it's a little bit harder.
I think, if you're doing any sort of marketing or outreach to communities of color to come to park programs, I mean, maybe there's an initiative where you are outreaching specifically to BIPOC communities to access the parks, or,
Right.
but then of course I'm creating programs for you that may or may
Yeah.
not exist.
So
but
Amy, you
anyways.
might find this interesting. In 2016, our Board of Trustees decided to expand our mission downstream. So the primary mission of the Great Swamp Watershed Association is the water quality monitoring and testing in the streams and the rivers that feed the Passaic River in New Jersey, from which 2.5 million people get their drinking and bathing water. So to answer your question, this may be a way of answering your question, addressing what Denise just said. Our primary focus has historically been in the Morristown, Madison, Chatham, Summit, general vicinity. But when the board made this decision in 2016, we're now pushing downstream, toward Patterson and toward Newark, because we felt if we do this good work for the folks here, let's bring it to, as you would say, marginalized communities or more urban communities. Well, that hasn't been easy, because these people, who are you and where are you coming from and why do we need you? To make inroads in those communities has not been easy for our education staff, and to get funding. That's a whole nother, kettle of fish. So we're trying and we're making progress. They certainly welcome the work we do, but quite frankly, when they're trying to keep their kids off the streets, you know what I mean, and make do with the lock key or whatever the terminology is, they have priorities that might not include the Great Swamp Watershed Association.
All right. So listen, I want to acknowledge and be careful of using language like these people, right? So the question is, what fits within your mission and what should you be doing? So,
Right.
Denise, I think another thing probably is, recruiting people of color to your board, to your committees, subcommittees,
Right.
and they will open doors and provide access. So, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Let's,
we've tried that too. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
I say we've tried that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good,
Okay.
good course of action.
All right. Excellent. All right. So let's talk about, Christina, I scribbled difference for environmental space. Oh, difference in fundraisers, major gifts. Why don't you ask the question again and expand? I'm like, I don't even know what I wrote down.
Oh, so I've worked at a variety of different organizations. I worked for Girl Scouts Council, a museum, a health organization, and there's always kind of these different nuances in terms of how you ask and what sorts of places you ask. So I was just wondering, like, this is the first environmental place I've worked at. What should I be doing differently, or what are those nuances?
So I think it's just a matter of case that's different, right? I'm not sure that the process is different. I think it's always about finding people who believe in the mission and who are passionate about the cause. I think with an environmental cause, there's actually a stronger case in many areas for planned gifts and long-term giving, because this is going to be a continuing issue or area of concern and need and importance. And so I think you have a really strong case for planned giving to preserve the earth into future decades and generations. But in terms of how the process goes, I don't think there's a difference. It's really about finding the people that care about your issue and connecting them with the mission and the programs and services that you're offering and doing. So I don't think there's a difference, really. Have you found that there's a difference? Or you're worried that there's a difference?
I haven't really found that there's a difference. Just that it seems like for each type of area, different donors are attracted. So I guess, like you say, finding those people who are attracted to the mission.
Yeah.
What you have to do is the same. It's just, you have to get those personalities down.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Brielle, do you want to introduce yourself? We went around, and if you have a question or a topic for us, I'd be happy to hear it.
Hi, Amy. Sure. My name is Brielle Olshan. I'm with the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. I am the Director of Strategy and Operations, and I am really happy to be here. I'm sorry I was late. No questions right now.
Okay, welcome. Great. All right, David, let's talk about the board and engaging board members and board retreats. And then I see your question also in the chat about budgets. So why don't you repeat or elaborate on the question?
Yeah, I think, I think when it comes to boards, right, fundraising can be a little bit intimidating for some people, better for other people. So when it comes to major gifts, it's just very obviously more intimidating. So I would say, how do you best, or what do you recommend in terms of engaging your board? And, is there like a one pager? Is there a board retreat? Is there something that, where do you begin, I guess is the question.
Okay. I'm so glad that you say, where do you begin? Because it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. We're going to train our board and then we never have to do anything again. To me, engaging your board with fundraising is a process, and there should be a discussion on the agenda item about engaging the board with fundraising at every single board meeting. So sometimes it's a 15-minute discussion, sometimes it's a 30 or 45-minute discussion. And when organizations tell me that fundraising is either last on your board agenda or that they don't have time for it, I say, well, you're telling your board members loud and clear where the priority for fundraising is. It's last or non-existent. So whether you're having a retreat or a regular board meeting, fundraising should be right there in the middle of the agenda prominently with, 30 minutes of time, not just for a fundraising report. That's something you circulate in advance and you can ask if there are any questions, but really you should be having a discussion. And by a discussion, I mean an open-ended question. So let's start with a retreat. Yes, I think every board should have an annual retreat. They should use a half day for planning, for strategic planning, review the plan and update the plan, or, create a new plan, and then half the day for fundraising, discussion, learning, training. I kind of have come to hate the word training because no adult wants to be trained, but you can participate in learning, right? And so where is Andrea's? Oh, here it is. So I have the best book in the world to train your board. So if you're doing a retreat and you haven't hired a facilitator, get this book. It's called Train Your Board and Everyone Else to Raise Money. On my screen, it looks inverted. Is the title the right way for you guys?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So anyways, it's by Andrea Kilstead, who's my business partner, and Andy Robinson. I think it's on Amazon. It is the best board training book. It's full of recipes, They do outline it like a cookbook, which is why I said recipes. It's exercises for training your board. And gives, the sort of ingredient list is what items you need, how long it should take, what the facilitator's role is, what the debrief is, how the exercise goes, and it's amazing. So I think you should use one of those exercises at every single board meeting. And I like to have a calendar of board meetings. Let's say you have 8 board meetings a year. What's going to be the fundraising topic of discussion each one? Plan it out. So 3 months or 4 months before your gala, the topic should be getting sponsors. Let's have a discussion. Who would be a good sponsor? How might we go about getting sponsors? How should they be approached? What's worked in the past? What hasn't worked in the past? So and ask each board member, have you ever solicited a sponsor? How did it feel? What would make you successful? What would make you confident going to ask your employer to sponsor our gala? So every board meeting should be a discussion about fundraising. So, another topic might be identifying potential donors. So you can use the ABCs I just shared with you. Who do we have access to? Who believes in the mission? And who do you know that might make a gift? You might not say a major gift, might make a gift, right? So maybe even leave off C. Just do, who do we know that believes in the environment or cares about the environment, and start by thinking about groups of people, start with your family, start with your friends, then your neighbors. Who did you go to school with? Who do you know for your kids' soccer games? Who do you know at your church? Who have you talked to about the environment? Who might be interested in learning more? So the discussion might be, how do we find out when people care about our cause? What kind of questions, what might we ask on the soccer field, at work, to spark a conversation? So that might be a discussion point. So the only other thing I think that I want to say about engaging your board right now is that what I have discovered over the past 15 years of consulting is that not every board member needs to ask. And I know that surprises people sometimes. 15 years ago, I might have said, every board member needs to help with asking, but some board members are just terrible at asking. and they're terrified of asking, and they won't help with anything if you expect that of them. So instead, the training should focus on the 4 aspects of fundraising that we've been talking about. And what we want is every board member helping with fundraising in the area that they feel great. So you might use 4 board meetings to say, you know, focus on each of these areas. So for cultivation, you might have one board meeting say, let's make a list, let's brainstorm, turn to your neighbor. What are all the ways that we could teach people about our organization and we could learn about them? Cultivation is a two-way street. So I say there's sort of passive education, like sending someone a newsletter is sort of passive education, right? It's cultivating a little bit, but it's not a dialogue. It's not two-way, it's one way. So you could write a note on a newsletter saying, hey, I thought you might be interested in the article on page 2, or check out, you know, this interesting thing in our newsletter. But then when it really becomes cultivation is, hey, you want to get coffee and talk about it? Let's see what you think. I need to learn about you. So let's brainstorm all the ways that we cultivate people, like tours, you know. So then when you come up with a list of all these things, do it for solicitation too, in your board meeting. You know, let's spend 30 minutes, get off and go off in pairs of 2 or small groups of 3, brainstorm. How are all the ways that we ask for money at our organization currently? We send an annual appeal, we do a gala, you know, we do this, that, and the other thing. All right, how have you been solicited by other organizations? Have them discuss those. And then once we have all these kinds of fundraising, say, all right, pick 2 ways that you can help our organization raise funds. Some people are not going to pick solicitation. That's fine. Let them help with cultivation. Let them help with donor identification. Let them help with stewardship. Get everybody involved with fundraising in a way that feels happy and comfortable for them. I had this wonderful board member at this organization that I worked at before I became a consultant. And he introduced us to a friend of his. He brought him to a gala. He brought him for a tour, and we were ready to go ask him for money. And the board member wanted to ask his friend for $5,000. And I wanted to ask his friend for $25,000. And I asked the board member if he would stay home and not come to the solicitation. And he was thrilled. And I went and asked his friend for $25,000, which he gave us. But if the board member had come, we would have asked for $5,000, not $25,000. So did the board member help with fundraising? Absolutely. He introduced this guy, he cultivated him, and he stayed home the day of the solicitation. I was thrilled. So not every board member needs to ask, but they do need to help with fundraising, and figuring out how they can help with fundraising in a productive way and a way that makes them feel good is a great thing. Often they will start by helping with thanking. So if you can get them to make thank you calls, to help write thank you notes, it's a great way to introduce people to fundraising and have them feel good. All right. And I highly recommend hiring a facilitator for your board retreat. Not everybody's going to do it, but I do recommend it. I think it lets the staff participate. It adds an air of professionalism, and board members sit up and pay attention when you're paying someone outside the organization in a way that they don't sit up and pay attention when it's the development director leading the retreat. And I hate to say it, but it's true.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So, all right. And David, you're asking about requesting and structuring an internal budget to execute a cultivation plan for major gifts. So I will tell you how we do it for capital campaigns, and then we'll talk about sort of scaling it for a major gifts effort. So in a capital campaign, we encourage organizations to create a campaign budget of 10% of goal, right? So if an organization wants to raise $1 million, their campaign goal would be 100,000, 10% of $1 million over 3 years, over the life of the campaign. And so a $10 million campaign would have $1 million budget over 3 years. And, you know, that's a good starting place. Now with major gifts, you could do the same kind of thing, right? Are you trying to raise 100,000 or 500,000? 10% seems like a good return on investment. So, but then of course you have to put that on top of your goal. So a $10 million goal becomes an $11 million goal. $1 million goal becomes a $1.1 million goal. You have to raise it and pay it back. But that's sort of the rule of thumb. That's the get you started, right?
That's helpful. I mean, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Lauren. Oh, well, I'm going to get to Lauren's question about trends and Seth Godin. What else? Other questions that have come up for people as we've been talking? Okay. It's a little bit all over the place conversation, but I like it. I think it's, I mean, you know, well, hopefully it works for you. All right, Lauren, talk to me about what questions, or just reiterate the question, or what do you want to talk about?
So in terms of trends, are you seeing anything that that leads you towards one way of doing things versus something you might have done in the past? Or is there something new that you're seeing entirely that you're like, oh, this is, wow, something, wow, I had no idea.
Right. No, it's a good question. So I think that the thing to always pay attention to these days is technology, and I'm including apps and services in that. So, you know, there's a few things to pay attention to. One is technology does a few things. One is it can keep you organized. It can save you time. It can make communication effective and efficient. So how are you using technology, and what new things are you trying in order to be successful at raising major gifts? So I have to say that, you know, and really paying attention to the way your donors communicate. You know, 10 years ago, I would have thought it was really inappropriate to text a donor. I don't feel that way anymore. Everybody texts, right? That's just, you know, my 75-year-old parents text. Everybody texts. And so I think paying attention to how your donors communicate and mirroring their communication, or even asking them, right? What's the best way to get in touch with you? How do you like to be communicated with? You know, phone calling may not be so effective anymore. Everybody screens their phone calls. If it's not a recognizable number, or if they see that it's an organization calling, they may just not pick up. So, you know, are you messaging them through Facebook or through, you know, another tool that they're using? So thinking about the ways that you use technology, I think, is important. I will tell you that 2 years ago, I started using Calendly for scheduling. And my business partner, Andrea, was really worried that it would come across as impersonal and really lose touches with people, right? She's like, well, but the back and forth emailing, the scheduling is like, counts as like touches. I'm like, no, they're not high value add touches. They're just inconvenience touches, right? So we adopted Calendly, and I have to say that I think it saves me 100 hours a year, right? 2 hours a week of going back and forth. Are you available this date? Are you available that date? I'm not available this date. And so, I mean, how many things can you say save you 100 hours a year? That's pretty significant, right? So I think it's about finding. Now, would I send my Calendly link to the most important donor I had on my list, or someone who's super, super busy? I wouldn't. I would say, you know what? I will make myself available next Tuesday or Thursday. You know, what works for you? So there are times to use the technology and times not to use the technology. And I think it's important to think about it. But so what are the services that you're using? Trello is a project planning tool. It keeps me organized. I know, what am I doing? What am I doing? What's on my list? It's more than a glorified notepad with my list, right? Trello, it's not exactly the same. So when are you integrating technology and when are you sort of going old school? So in terms of trends, I think that those are the things to pay attention to. This year, have we tried a new service or app or technology? And if we haven't, let's find out what's out there. What are we missing? What should we try? Most of these things are relatively inexpensive. None of them are, very costly. So I don't think that, I think that's what I would focus on right now. I don't think there's major changes, except for that people want to be engaged, want to be involved. The more you can involve people, the better. Will they volunteer? Will they take a tour? Will they come, dig a hole? Then you get their buy-in, right? So I guess that's what I'll say for now on that. You specifically asked about capital campaigns, which of course I'm neck deep in capital campaigns. And I will tell you, everybody wants to know if it's a good time to start a capital campaign, right? Is it a good time to, the economy's tanking. Is it a good time to start a capital campaign? My response is, and I'm sticking with it, that a capital campaign spans over usually 3 years, right? 2 to 4 years. And the economy goes up and the economy goes down. There's a world crisis and then there's not a world crisis during that time span. And I will tell you that the organizations that were brave enough to continue their campaigns at the beginning of COVID are finished. And the ones that postponed are just getting started. And they're worried about the economy. I had an organization the other day, they're ready to start with us, but they're like, you know what? I'm not sure. Should we start in the summer? I'm like, oh my goodness. Then it's going to be Christmas. Like there's always a reason not to start. So like, if you have a vision, if you have a campaign objectives, if there's a strong reason for a campaign, just do it or you're never going to do it. Right. Anyways. All right. That's what I'm seeing. And then I'll say something quickly about Seth Godin, just because you asked, and it's such a funny story. It's actually such a good fundraising story. Do you guys know who Seth Godin is? He's a marketing guru. He's written 50 bestsellers. And he blogs daily. He sends out his daily tips and he's sort of a marketing guru, I guess. So I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't know, Lauren, how long ago it was. He was one of the keynotes of the big AFP International Icon Conference. And I was doing video interviews of some speakers. So I was like, well, he's going to be in the same place at the same time as me, and I'm going to have a video camera. So let me just ask him if I can interview him. So I emailed him, I don't know, a month before the conference. I said, hey, see, you're a keynote speaker. I'd love to do a 15-minute video interview. And he wrote back and he pushed me off, which is what he should have done. He said, I don't know my schedule yet. Contact me closer to the date. All right. So a week out. And I couldn't believe, honestly, this is a guy, he has a zillion followers. Honestly, I couldn't believe he was answering his own email address or that I even found it. He responded like this, by the way, like so fast, it was unbelievable. So I emailed him a week before. I said, hey, I contacted you a month ago. I want to interview you. He's like, I don't know my schedule. Check back with me later. So the day before I emailed him, I'm like, what is the chance that, anytime in the next 3 days, you can give me 15 minutes? And he's like, okay, here's my 15 minutes. So, so the lesson for fundraising is persistence. That's the first lesson. The second time I interviewed him was a couple years later. It was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I emailed him and I said, hey, I've got this new project going on. You let me email you or video you 5 years ago. Can I do an interview with you? And he said, nope, sorry. not going to happen. I was like, all right, well, I teach fundraisers all day long not to take no for an answer. Like, is this a really hard no, or is this like is there any room for negotiating this no? So I emailed him back. I'm like, I totally get it. You're completely busy. I said, I'll take an hour, you know, any time in the next 6 months. What can I do in return? And he wrote back like, I said, you know, how much do you charge? Right? Like, all right, fine. I'm happy to think about, I don't know if he charges 100,000 or, you know, whatever. So he wrote back and he's like, I normally charge this, but I know that that's like not what we're talking about here. So, you know, maybe I'll consider it. I've got some books I want to promote. So I'm like, great, I'll promote the heck out, you know, I'll do anything you want. So he wrote back and he's like, I don't know. So, you know, a couple month goes by, I wrote him again. I'm like, okay, how about this? We'll buy, you know, a book for every attendee and whatever, and we'll raffle off something. And he said yes. And so no's not no, persistence, right? I mean, does it work every time? No, but it was, you know, I have to say, I've been doing videos and broadcasts and things for a decade. And those Seth Godin videos have, you know, 100 times the views of anything else I've done. So it was worth it. So if you're going for $1 million gift, like patience, persistence, you know, conversation, cultivation, these things do not happen quickly or without some speed bumps. You know, you just have to say, all right. I mean, look, he could have said no. Ultimately, he did say no to me several times. And I said, well, how about if we do it this way? How about you're not available in the afternoons? How about in the morning? You know, you don't want to do it on, you know, Thursdays. I'll do it any day of the week that you want to do it, you know? So like, was it grovelly? I don't know. It was effective. I was like, whenever you're available, I'll be there. And we did it. And it was awesome. And you know, those videos have more traction for my websites than any, you know, look up Amy Eisenstein fundraising, Seth Godin, you'll see them. They're very cool. So anyways, persistence, don't take no for an answer. No is not a no. Find out if it's a hard no, or if it's a soft no, if it's a not now, come back later kind of no, or maybe it's the wrong asker from your organization. Maybe they want to talk to a board member. Maybe they want to talk to your executive director. Maybe you asked for the wrong things. Hey, listen, tell me more about that. No, right? I really thought you loved the environment. I thought you were passionate at the parks in Morris County. Can you tell me what would feel really good to you? So just ask questions, be persistent. All right, we are getting towards the end of our time, and I'm happy to stay on for another minute or two. I do have another meeting at 1, and I want to let you run to the restroom before your next meeting. But any final thoughts or questions? All right, guys, 10 prospects, identify them. 10, start with your list of 10. This is for the rest of the year. You've got 7 months. So by December, you should have asked for 10 major gifts. Start cultivating them now. Go back to your offices right now. Make a list of your top 10 prospective donors based on ABC. Get them out of your donor database. Who are your best givers, your most loyal donors? But they've never been asked in person. They've never been asked for a specific amount. So they just send, you know, $1,000 through the mail. You should be developing and cultivating relationships with them. You should go to coffee with them, invite yourself over to their house, invite them to the park, take a walk with them. I mean, honestly, that's what you should be doing with your donors, is taking walks with them, right? Ask them, could we meet in the park next week? You know, hopefully Tuesday or Wednesday will be nice and sunny, right? What time works for you? Where can I meet you? Let's take a walk for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, and start cultivating these 10 people, and then make a plan for asking them. And you will be raising major gifts before you know it. All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. It was nice to see you. Good luck.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, bye,
Thanks, Amy.
guys. Take care.
Thank
Very
you.
helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.